this project, this event is part of a larger project called Ocean Allies. And what we wanted to do today was to give people an opportunity to just work on their networking because it is a little bit different these days and it is a skill that you can learn for sure. So we'll start just with an overview of what we're planning to do today so that everyone knows what we're planning to do and how we're going to go about it. We're going to talk about what happens before you network. We're going to talk about while you're networking, after the event, with kind of the 3 phases that we've broken things down into. And then we'll give a little bit of information about Ocean Allies and the other stuff you may want to get involved with on that. So I'm going to start this with a bit of a story about networking because networking isn't always fun. And I do often have people come up to me and they say, you know, why are you able to do this? Is it just I'm not good at networking? Other people are good at networking. I'm not good at it. I can tell you that it is certainly not a born skill. It is a skill that you can study and execute with shocking effectiveness. It's a little bit terrifying. So, when I first started doing some serious scientific networking, it's probably 2000. And I remember, just trying to work my way around the room and it was awful. It was so sweaty. Everyone seemed to be talking to someone else. And at the same time, I just couldn't talk to anyone. And so being a scientific minded person, I obviously did a little bit of research about that. And the thing is, people can absolutely learn about networking. So we can make networking fun because it's directly related. Like the research on networking is that if you network, it is directly related to your salary and also to your career satisfaction, which I frankly find a little bit upsetting. I would like to think that your salary and your career satisfaction would be based on other factors, but there is a big aspect of just networking is really important. But it's also something that is a little bit sad in terms of non-traditional workers do invest significantly less time in networking. And so we know that the people who are networking are making more money and are happier in their careers, but those are the dominant workforce. So that's something that we really want to see changing with this project Ocean Allies. So this was one of my go-to sources. I make so many people on my team read it. Daniel has suffered through it. I think Karen has suffered through it. And it is a classic on how to win friends and influence people. It's the psychology of networking. And it's, yeah, as you said, a little bit terrifying, but surprisingly effective. So there's no reason that you have to just be good at networking or be born to network. You can just do the things that you're supposed to do according to research, like the nerds that we are. So we kind of took this and put a layer on it, which is the fun part of networking and also with what it is a little bit different sometimes in the ocean. I know every industry thinks they have their idiosyncrasies. I was told last week that every industry thinks they have their idiosyncrasies and most of them don't, but nonetheless, we think we do. So one of the people on my team actually put together this really nice infographic on networking. So I do want to share that networking, the link to that in the chat so that you will have that. So I'm just going to take a second and pop that up for you guys. There we go. And so you can go in and check that out anytime. And it's really a wonderful resource that we've built as a team based on our research on what we can be doing to make networking fun and easy and effective for you. So we broke it down into 3 stages. There's the before, during, and the after. So, and we'll go through these one by one by one, but you can see there's a real flow in this adorable line where we're trying to catch a fish. Plan who you're going to meet with, commit to your promise, show up, look for a chance to use and promote your areas of skills, be purposeful and intentful with the questions you have to ask. So just be curious, and we're all curious people or else we wouldn't be in this industry. Connect in small increments and be careful about getting too familiar too quickly. I fall into this trap all the time. I'm like, oh, well, do you want to come over for Scrabble on Saturday? That might be a little much on your first networking event, but I have trouble with that one. One thing that used to be really important, but becoming a little bit less important lately, but the meal times and breaks are a great chance to network. Being genuinely interested and focused on learning. There are a lot of interesting people out there and networking is a great way to learn stuff. Talk to the other person in terms of interest to create a bond. And we'll go into each of these in detail, but I really believe in the tell people where they're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So you can hear this a couple of times. When you're done leaving it, thank them for the conversation, and then of course ask them if there's someone else that you should meet, because then you're leveraging their network. Follow through with follow up. So if you say that you're going to do something, do it. Send them a quick email afterwards, to phone, or schedule to meet. Make the time to go to networking events. I can't emphasize this enough. Although it does seem like one of the least important things you're going to do in a day, it's statistically, it is a really important thing to do. And then refer other people and build your network before you need it. So rather than waiting until you're job seeking or until you need expert advice from someone, just keep going it all the time, and then you have that network when you need it. Ladder your network, start with one person and then ask them, as we said earlier, for potential connections. So you can do that offline or online. And then be sensitive to the fact that there are a lot of different people in our industry and hoping to be growing those. So understanding that not everyone thinks what you think is fun is fun. So breaking those down, thinking about who you're going to meet with. So when you go to an event, just gonna, people have little Zoom hands they could raise here. Does anyone think about who they're going to meet before they go to an event? I go through every single conference list. So if I go to a conference, I will actually go through the conference list before I go and have a list. I can show you the list actually from previous events that I've gone to, where I call it my hit list, which is people that I want to see while I'm there, and either because I've never met them or because they are someone I've had contact with before and I want to reaffirm that connection, or maybe it's someone who I just really miss because I haven't seen them in a year and it's time to see them again. Also, if you say you're going to go to a thing, you really should show up. And I really think about this a lot in terms of, we often talk about our business, the best way to get business is to do good work. And if you think about someone that you're going to work with, you don't want someone who's not going to show up. So if you say you're going to go, you should show up. Be reliable. It's actually really important. I know it sounds a bit silly, but it is what it is. And then this one, you want to look for things to use and promote your areas of skills. And one of the things about this is sometimes it can be really difficult to meet people. But if you're the person who's actually the person that people want to meet, so for example, if you're the speaker, or if you're presenting a poster, or if you have an opportunity to do something associated with the event. So with my team, we do event management. So sometimes we volunteer to do event management so that people actually see us doing good work and then they interact with us using our skills in that format. So these are all pretty mercenary. So they're all that kind of like, kind of gross, self-serving networking kind of thing. But so let's think about what actually happens at a networking event. Does anyone want to volunteer any good networking stories? Or do I have to tell them all? Okay, I'm going to do Friday afternoon. I'm going to tell them all. So when you go to an event and maybe you start a conversation with someone and they want to show you their skills and tell you about how great they are. So they just list off their resume and suddenly it becomes a 10-minute conversation about the moment from since when they graduated high school until how they got here now, right? Or maybe they start talking about who they know. Or maybe, they have a hit list, but it's all of the speakers of the event, right? Like if I put Zdenka Willis and Angela Merkel on my list, then that's kind of awkward for the people around me. Or maybe you're just too needy. Sometimes I find as the receiver of networking, I have to say doing this networking event is not entirely not self-serving. I want people to do it better so it's less painful for everyone. But sometimes people ask for too much, like right away. They're just, and I know that we just said that, but the thing is, once you get to the event, it changes. So before the event, we're talking about introspective behaviors that are you doing stuff that are based on you, right? So let's just, going to go back to those for a second here. So before the event, you were going to plan who you want to meet with. You were going to commit to show up. You were going to look for a chance to use and promote your areas of skills. So it's all you. But once you get to the event, that's when it stops being about you. And I cannot emphasize that enough. So when you get to the event, it's not about you anymore. It's now about the other people and about them enjoying the conversation with you. because now you are grateful for their time. You want to have this interaction with them. And so be thoughtful about your questions. And that can be something that I'm getting ahead of myself now, but that can be something that you see that you have in common. So for me, sometimes I will see someone who also maybe is a bit of a data nerd when it comes to oceans. And so I will be like, how did you get involved with ocean data? So thinking about the questions instead of, I mean, there's that standard, what do you do? Where you work? So, but those like that's 2 seconds of conversation and then you're just wishing you're not in that conversation anymore. So you got to have a little bit more than that if you're not just moving on. And sometimes it's okay to move on at that point, but like think about what it is you want to ask and ask genuinely interesting questions. So maybe you are in early in your career and you are genuinely interested about how Jim Hanlon became the CEO of Cove. Ask him that question. That's a fun story. People like to talk about themselves. You want to connect in small increments. And again, being careful about being familiar too quickly. People don't want to know everything about you. It can take a while to actually, especially if you're an introvert, which most of the people on my team are, it can be a little much to learn everything about everyone right away. So maybe just having a 10-minute conversation with someone where you share one piece of personal information, like I like soccer, or I really like data visualizations, but not I like data visualizations and my mom has cancer. Like that's just like a little too intimate, a little too quickly, right? So you want to kind of keep it on the early before you've developed a relationship with that person. We talked a little bit about this earlier. It's something that I wish was a thing we did right now, but it's not. But I have to say, when it comes to conferences and events, those meal times and breaks are probably more important than the presentations. The presentations, especially in this day and age, you can probably get the slides after, you can watch it on YouTube later, but those meal times, those chances where you're at the break, where you can talk and stand in line. Like lines are an excellent source of networking because when you're in a line, first of all, you have a common purpose. You are lining up for something. You both want the same thing. So you can be like, hey, how come you're lining up for this water and not the other water? That's a terrible question, but you get my point. Did did you ask for a vegetarian option? I'm a vegetarian. Just like things about you have a commonality in this situation because you're both in line for a thing that you're waiting for. So immediately have some sort of a connection with that other person that you can leverage. This is my favorite one. I am a nerd. I am an introvert, but I am genuinely curious about how other people live their lives. I am discovering new things about other people all the time. I only recently discovered that not everyone is ambitious. That was a shocking revelation for me in like 2015. And just like I am genuinely interested, and it doesn't have to be my field. So I do a lot of ocean data, a lot of ocean research management, but sometimes you'll run into someone who's turning crickets into fish feed, and you're like, how does that work? And how did this happen to you? Why are you doing this? Do other people do this? Is this like an industry that I should know about? And once you're genuinely interested, like there's usually a nugget in there that you can get hooked on with regards to the conversation that you're having with a person. People are so complicated and there's so much going on in their lives that there probably is something that they know that you'd be interested in knowing. And people do love to talk about themselves. So I alluded to this one a little bit earlier, but talking in terms of the other person's interests to create a bond. So this is a classic psychological thing. And this is one of the challenges associated with having more diversity, is that we like people who are like us. Babies like other babies dressed in the same color t-shirt as them. Like it's that simple. You can take a baby and be like, this baby's in a green shirt and that baby's in the red shirt and another baby's in a green shirt. The two green shirted babies will play together. It's that simple. So it can be really helpful to find something commonality. But in addition, I go back to that, people love to talk about themselves. And so if they're very interested in rudder design, which I am not interested in on the surface, but if they're really interested in it, maybe I might ask them, like, why are you interested in rudder design? What brought you into that industry? And then they get to talk about the thing that they really enjoy, and I get to satisfy my curiosity why anyone cares about rudder design. So to me, those go hand in hand. And then, of course, just being essentially polite. And this is actually one that I find quite difficult, is not being polite, but exiting a conversation. I don't know if you guys have ever been stuck in a conversation where it's clearly run out of gas. This happens in social situations as well as in business situations, where you just don't know how to leave. And in a business situation, I don't recommend this at a Christmas party at your family's, but in a business situation, you can thank them for the conversation and be like, thank you. I really appreciate your time. That was a lovely conversation. And then leave. And I have to say, I kind of wish that one would work in a social situation. Could you imagine if you're like an awkward Christmas party and just be like, thanks for this time. This was good. And then just walk away. But I don't think we can do that yet. I might try it. We'll see. The other thing you can do to exit a conversation, and also is a very beneficial way to exit a conversation, is to say, it's been really nice chatting with you. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here that you think I should meet? Usually people are happy to, they've probably felt that the conversation has started to end as well. And so they're probably pretty content to actually have you talk to someone else. And that someone else hopefully will be a beneficial connection for you. So when you put those all together, and this is where people are going to wake up and shake off the Friday lunches, you can have a really interesting conversation. Now, in this scenario, I didn't ask anyone to do any pre-networking adventures. So I know you don't have any plans about who you're going to meet. I do appreciate that you did commit and you did show up. And I didn't necessarily expect you to plan to show off your skills today. But what I would like is for Daniel, our Zoom genie, to plunk people in rooms of 2. So you're not done. This is the thing. And I find this one really tough. I talk a lot about how I find networking tough because it is hard. So after you go to the event, and for me, you're tired, you've pretended to be an extrovert for an hour, and you're like, please, can I just go and read my book now? You're not done. You now have the after. And this is actually where a lot of the rubber hits the road. Like, it's one thing to go and have a good conversation with someone. This is really, to me, what solidifies the network and allows it to snowball, is after you've done that, you've got the after work that we talked about earlier. So if you say, I will send you that article that I read about the Franklin, then make sure that you send that article and send it in a fairly timely way. And honestly, if you can do it right away, if networking is not really your jam, if it's not something you're excited about, it's kind of like, for me, ripping off a Band-Aid. Like, I like to do it right away. So sometimes I'll even do it in the car, on the bus on the way home, wherever it is I'm going next. I will just do it right away, because otherwise it hangs over me and I'm like, oh, I have to do that. Like, I told that person. And then it becomes 2 days and 3 days, and then it's like a week, and you're like, oh, should I still send it? And now it's like a source of anxiety for me. So, walk your own path, but I have to say, it's a lot better to do it right away. And I'll roll that back to, what kind of a coworker do you want, right? Do you want someone who follows up right away? Probably. So if you're looking to build people in your network, treat as if you would like to be treated. So you would probably like to get information right away. Even if they haven't done that, if it's someone you want to solidify in your network, you can't have like a long-standing relationship based on a 10-minute conversation at a networking event. You need to have a one-on-one, probably 45 minutes. So you might want to actually set up a time at their convenience, depending on the person, and say, I'd love to spend time, and oftentimes I find that someone will be like, we should get together, and then they like walk away. And most of the time they are very much meaningful about that. They do mean that. They do want to get together, but it's probably going to be you who's going to actually do the work. So if you've been hanging out with Angela Merkel or, Jim Hanlon, I'm going to put those just right together like they're the same. and they say, we should get together. That's a good idea. Kind of in the next 48 hours, you should drop them an email and say, I'd love to get together. I'd love to take you up on that offer. When's a good time? Because, strike while the fire is hot and they remember your name. This one, make time to go to network events even when you're busy. And this is one of the glorious things the pandemic has given us, guys. We don't have to leave our houses to do this anymore. So you don't have to, arrange a flight or a hotel. You don't have to figure out the buses or anything. You don't have to see, even if the networking event is at the right time based on your city. You could be networking in Vancouver. You could be networking in San Diego right now. So make the time to go to the networking events, even when you're busy. And I'm not saying you should spend your whole week networking, but you should probably spend 2 hours a month networking just to make sure that you are meeting some people and that you're making connections and keeping your brain a little bit fresh because you're learning new things about these people. This is another one I really like, which is built on the principle of reciprocity. You want to give first. So if you would like to build your network and this other person is probably building their network, give of your network as well. And I'm not saying tell everyone you know, not necessarily, but if you can think of a mutually beneficial connection between two of the people that you know, that will really solidify your relationship. So making sure that you're doing that and therefore giving back. And I would even throw that into that kind of higher purpose of why networking can be good for the world, because maybe you meet someone who's really struggling with networking, but you know that they would love to meet Daniel. And so you connect them. And now you've done something good for the world and you can feel good about that. Similarly, when you're doing work like that, when you're doing proactive giving of network, you're also building your network at a time before you need it. So if you put that effort in early to build that network when you don't need it, then when you do need it, so when you realize, I don't know anything about ocean literacy communication, you can be like, Sherry introduced me to that nice lady Diz. She knows stuff about that. And you can call Diz as opposed to trying to meet someone who knows something about ocean literacy when you need it or when you need a job or something like that. So finally, this is the laddering piece, which is very similar to the in-person. When you say, is there someone else here that I should meet? Which can both be a way to leave a conversation and also a way to grow your network a little bit more. If you can also ladder your network virtually. And I have found that is surprisingly effective, even in these days of the pandemic. So you meet someone and maybe you have a virtual coffee or a virtual beer or whatever your favorite thing is to do. And then you can say, is there someone else that you think I should meet? Or I'm looking for someone who knows something about ocean literacy. Do you know someone? Or sometimes I like to rifle in people's LinkedIn profiles. I don't know if you guys do this, but if I'm looking for someone who has a specific skill set or who lives in a particular city or works at a particular company, I will use LinkedIn to look for my second or that third layer connection. And then I'll say, Sherry, how well do you know that person at Petrocan? Could you introduce me? And so thinking that works super well this day and age because you don't have to wait for that lag in between conferencing and networking events. So when we're doing this stuff in person, you'd always be like, well, next time when I go to Ottawa or when I go to Newfoundland or when I go to Victoria, I'll make sure that I meet X, Y, or Z. Whereas now you can just be like, it doesn't matter where I am. I can just ask to meet them next week. I don't need to center it around an event anymore, which personally I think is a really fabulous benefit of the pandemic. There are lots of bad things, but that's a good one. So the one other thing I wanted to talk about just briefly is, and it comes back to again, the it's not about you thing. So understanding that there is a dominant culture in most workplaces. And in the ocean technology, it is a Eurocentric culture. And I think it's really important that we stop for a second and understand that not everybody thinks the same things are fun and not everybody has the same what am I trying to say? The same schedules in their day. So again, it comes back to the asking people, what would they like to do to follow up? So instead of, and I'm finding even just in the Eurocentric culture, it's really starting to shift away from an alcohol-centric culture, which I think is fabulous. So I can't assume that someone wants to go for a beer, right? Whereas I feel like 10 years ago, it would have been really strange if someone said, do you want to go for a beer? And someone said, I don't drink beer. They'd be like, what now? Whereas, not only is that becoming more popular that people don't drink, but also that is also a cultural change for people too, right? There are many cultures that just don't do that. Or there are cultures that have particular times a day that it's not appropriate to have a business meeting. And so the easy answer to that one is to say, I'd love to get together with you when and where, and letting other people guide that instead of forcing your own cultural values on them. So with that pitch, I would throw it out there for any questions that anyone has on networking. Well, then I will assume.
Sorry, I do have one. It's my main problem with networking isn't when, I'm randomly locked in a room with somebody like we kind of just were, or if you're in line beside somebody, but it's when you're faced with a sea of people and you have to approach something or someone or a group or whatever. I find that introduction and that walk up very hard for me.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for that one, Daniel. Couple of strategies I would recommend for that one. One, and that, I was telling that story of like 2000 when I was like just like sweaty at a conference and trying to network. I just walked up to random groups of people and I said, hi, I'm aggressively networking. And that actually worked incredibly well. The other thing is research suggests that if you can find a wingman to go with you, that's incredible. So if you can find someone, and that goes back to that planning before you go. So if you know someone who may be peripheral to this community or in this community and say like, hey, Katrina, next time you go, do you think I could come with you? Then, Katrina might be able to introduce you to a few people, or you can even ask beforehand. I've seen this one work really well too. If you really want to meet someone and you could email them in advance and say, hey, Sherry, I read about your profile on LinkedIn. I'd really like to get together with you. Would it be possible for us to meet at the next Ocean Connector or something like that? And yeah, and the last one I would throw out for that is everybody else feels the same way. Like, statistically, something like 80% of people feel awkward at networking events. So understanding that you have that commonality as well, that you don't want to approach them and they don't want to approach you, but we also want to have a conversation and we want to learn about other people. Maybe you can start with some of the people who are, look around the room and kind of step out of your side, out of yourself for a second. And again, think about the other people. And if you start looking around the room, you'll realize there's a lot of other people that wish they were in a conversation too. So I often look for that peripheral. And sometimes people are really grateful for that. If they're feeling a little bit awkward about being around the edge, and you can just kind of walk up and be like, hey, I'm Daniel. And you'll see their shoulders drop because sometimes people get really anxious when they can't figure out how to enter a conversation when they're at a networking event. So again, doing something nice for other people makes it sometimes a little easier to get over some of our own inhibitions on how to open the conversation. Katrina?
I have a question. I think it could apply also to the online aspect of networking, but I know that the way that we dress is a very important aspect of networking. How does that transfer, I guess, onto the online platform, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot about that one, Katrina. And so I will also nest this in, like, I have no research to support this one whatsoever. But I've always dressed like the people I want to meet. And that's changed from place to place too, right? So I've noticed that some of my clients have maintained a very formal workplace dress, even though they're all working in their living rooms. And so when I meet with those clients, it's a blouse and a shirt. But some of my clients have just like given up, man. They're just wearing like the rattiest t-shirt they just slept in. And in that case, if you're wearing a blazer and a blouse, it makes them feel really uncomfortable. So if you again take it out of that lens of you and think about them, what would make them feel comfortable? So That would be my advice, but again, not bounded in any research, which is normally how I like to answer questions. Let's Google that later. Okay, so not seeing any other burning questions, I am going to just do a really brief pitch for this super cool project that you guys have heard everything about. So, Ocean Allies, and now you guys are like in the know because this has not been announced. It's being announced next Thursday, and it is a project that is bringing together diverse talent and Canada's ocean innovation ecosystem. And we are so excited about all the work that we're going to be doing on this with, and I just want to draw your attention to the right-hand column on this slide. These are all the people who want to see the ocean industry be more diverse. And I just think that's a really great statement right there. All these groups and so many more have put their names on this and said, we want this to happen. So we're going to be working over the next 6 months on a pilot project. You can sign up at the top here. I made a tinyurl.com Ocean Allies newsletter. If you'd like to keep up with the project as it develops, as I said, it's just starting next week. But we're going to be working on a baseline. We're going to be looking at the business case for diversity. We are going to be dismantling some of the systemic barriers. That sounds so exciting. Breaking down the walls, people, doing some hiring training and working on a community framework and a workplace framework to make it easier for communities and workplaces to embrace the diverse talent they want, targeted networking opportunities like this one. And also there's one at 3, which is going to be just live networking, no training. We're doing some career navigation support for people as they develop their careers. We'll also be doing monthly coffee chats. We had our second one on Tuesday. And looking at additional financial support for employers. So we've partnered with MyTax to bring in some employees. And also we're working to do public recognition for great work, where we are putting forward some of the great people that are working in Canada's ocean ecosystem for awards. I'm so excited about that. So I'd just like to say thank you everyone for your attention today. I really appreciate it. These are any of the ways that you can get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to hear from you. We are going to be editing this and editing out a lot of the humans and just going for the information. So this will be posted on the internet. If you want to share it with anyone later, it'll be on, we'll be linking it to our Twitter and it'll be on our YouTube channel. So with that, thanks everyone.